Um, Good afternoon. Happy Sunday, everybody. Welcome. We hope, as always, that everybody is able to maintain your spiritual, mental, and physical health during these times and all times. And we certainly welcome you today to our 1 hour seminar on the politics behind these white protests. And we really want to thank you today. We will start, as we always do, with everything we do in the All African People's Revolutionary Party. We first acknowledge the indigenous peoples of the Western Hemisphere. Every step that we take sloshes the blood of their sacrifice for the last 500 plus years, and we respect them and honor them and give our complete solidarity to their struggle to return these lands to them. And when we say that, we don't just mean rhetorically, we mean that they must get these lands back. These lands that we live in the Western Hemisphere belong to them. And we as African revolutionaries are determined to do everything we can to help them get their land back, because the stronger their fight, the stronger our fight. So we acknowledge our indigenous family members and we give respect and appreciation to them at all times. We also, of course, acknowledge our African ancestors who fought from the eastern shores of East Africa all the way to the western shores of the Western Hemisphere. They fought every step of the way for our liberation and our freedom, and we thank them for that. And we live in the shadow of their legacy, standing on their shoulders, doing the best we can to continue the work that they have done to bring us closer and closer to justice. And just a couple of housekeeping items before we start today. We have everybody muted and everybody will remain that way. Unfortunately, we live in a society where people will do whatever they can to stop you from communicating ideas that are healthy for the public. So we have to take those precautions to ensure that we are not in any way, there's no attempt to derail what we're doing. We're gonna have a different twist today. We're gonna have some, for those of you who are joining us through Zoom, some interaction at the end, so please stick around. But with that, before we start, just want to say, I hope again everyone is having a good day. I'm having a great moment. I just got an email from anyone that knows me knows that I love bean pies. I've eaten bean pies my whole life. And if you're not familiar with bean pies, it's a dessert made with navy beans and non-processed sugar. And I don't eat processed sugar. And so I had a brother here in Sacramento who made them, and I would get them all the time from him. But unfortunately, due to this current situation, that has not been a possibility. And so my lovely daughter, always looking out for my best interests, found a place in Los Angeles where I can order them. And I just got the email saying my bean pies are on their way. So there is no force on earth that can stop me today. So again, we welcome you all for joining us. And at that, we will begin. We just start, as always, by acknowledging the fact that this event today is not me as an individual giving my individual idealistic cerebral perspectives on these issues. This is an event from the All African People's Revolutionary Party. And I have been an organizer for the All African People's Revolutionary Party next month for 36 years, so overwhelmingly the majority of my life I've spent in this organization. And I've organized for the party all throughout Africa, the Caribbean, Europe, Canada, and these United Snakes of America. And our party, the All African People's Revolutionary Party, is a Pan-Africanist party, which means our objective is Pan-Africanism, which we define as one unified socialist Africa. A lot of people define Pan-Africanism many different ways, but for us, it can only mean one unified socialist Africa. And that is our objective. That is the work that we do to build a worldwide fighting force to bring that about. The book you see at the top, The Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare, was written by Kwame Nkrumah, who is the founder of the All African People's Revolutionary Party. And in that book, Nkrumah calls for the creation of a worldwide organization of Pan-African revolutionaries. So our work on the ground is specific to creating that reality. And the posters you see on the left are just recent examples of that work. The poster at the top was an event that took place last Saturday on the WhatsApp application, and it was a commemoration of the 59th year since our comrades in Cuba defeated U.S. imperialism when U.S. imperialism attempted to invade their island nation, their island socialist nation. And so that event was sponsored by the Amilcar Cabral Ideological Institute of Nigeria and had participants from our AAPRP chapter in Ghana, as well as participants from the African Party for the Independence of Guinea-Bissau, who are also at the same time members of the AAPRP as well. So that gives you an idea of some of the work that we're doing on the ground in Africa today. And then the bottom poster is an event that just happened yesterday morning, which is one of our comrades in Michigan speaking about the climate of protecting civil liberties in this COVID-19 environment we're in. And then a comrade from the Pan-Africanist Congress of Azania, or what you would probably call South Africa, who's also another one of our sister parties. And that event happens, and we are doing a number of these events, including and after African Liberation Day on May 25th. So please look for information about that. And so in terms of the AAPRP, we don't struggle in a vacuum. We have principled relationships with all the movements for justice. We mentioned the indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere, the Filipino National Liberation Movement, the Irish Republican Socialist Movement, the Palestinian National Liberation Movement. We maintain relationships with all of those movements and see them as important as the movement that we're in to liberate Africa and all of African humanity. And when we say African people, we're talking about all people of African descent. To us, if you are of African descent, you're African and belong to the African nation. No matter where you live on earth, until Africa is free, you will not be free. And so in terms of myself, I'm a prolific blogger. I'll give you the address there if you want information about that, reading articles. I'm very fortunate to have the opportunity to do that. Thousands of people read the articles I post every week. And so I will continue to do that as long as there's breath in my body. And I'm also the author of a number of books. And then joining me and helping facilitate today is my amazing daughter, Shakura, who is a PhD student in communications and public health and an activist and organizer in her own right. She was raised in this movement. She would have to change her last name if she were to live any other way, but she has correctly decided to dedicate her life, her education, her skills to the advancement of humanity. And she does a number of activist and organizer events around women's health, particularly African women's health in the area she lives in Tennessee. And I've had the opportunity to observe her wonderful work. So I'm so fortunate to be in this age where most people who pursue capitalist goals can't even have conversations with their children. Here I am on a Sunday afternoon able to participate in a forum like this in conjunction with my one and only child, my daughter. So I am honored to have her here with me helping. And she will be looking at the comments. If you have a comment to make, again, no one will be able to unmute, but if you have a comment to make, please write them in your chat section, which is on your Zoom menu at the bottom of your screen. And she will be reading those, and any questions or comments you have, we will stop and allow those to become a part of this session. All right. So let's begin what's happening with these strange protests we see? Hundreds, thousands of people converging on city centers, state centers across the country, American flags everywhere, demanding that all of these states open up and disregard these social distancing, shelter in place policies that have been implemented, demanding that this happen immediately, crying that the cure is worse than the virus, meaning the longer the economy is not prohibited to function in its full capitalist potential is worse than whatever impacts the virus itself will have. These are the arguments that they're making. And the interesting thing about that in point 2 is that if you listen to the talking points these people are using, they basically advance the notion that, COVID-19 is not really that big of a deal. It's being overstated in the fake news media, as they call it, and that it's not something that, you really need to be that worried about. And their willingness to rub shoulders with people they know and don't know, to them is proof to you and me that what they're saying is correct. And this is a reflection of the type of misinformation that capitalism develops among its populace. So, what people learn how to do in this society, what the schools we go to teach us, is just how to look at things from a very superficial level. We don't develop, the schools don't teach us how to have critical analysis and research skills. Most people don't read a book after they graduate from school when they're required to read. They don't read anything after that. Most people don't. And so you can't argue that critical thinking and analysis skills are dominant in this society. They without question are not. And this is an example of that. And the third point, these folks believe that the suffering of the economy is more important than the threat to the safety of all of us. Now, that's not to say that, we are, again, African revolutionaries. So, the United Snakes government, there's nothing, it's hard. If they say the sky is blue, it's difficult for me to believe it. I operate on Kwame Ture's logic that capitalism lies all the time. And if it tells the truth, it's only the result of a double lie. So this is not saying that what they're telling us is true and we need to listen to what the government is saying. But what it is saying is that if we develop the critical analysis that's required to evaluate a situation like this properly, we don't need to rely on our enemies for our analysis. We're able to take it at face value. And, anyway, even a grade school child can understand that in a society like this of 330 to 350 million people, where only 5 million people have been tested, that's about 1.5% of the population here. And there's no effective antiviral drugs that they have here, no vaccine. With those two components, it's insane to talk about opening up anything because you don't have any idea how many people have this thing. And so that's a problem. And then the other part in terms of the economy is that if you look at who's gotten the stimulus money from the so-called stimulus plan that was passed a couple of weeks ago, the multinational corporations have gotten a lion's share of the money. I talked about this during the capitalism seminar we did a couple of weeks ago, where about 70% of the proceeds from that so-called stimulus package went to corporations and not small businesses. We're talking about multinational corporations. So corporations like Goldman Sachs, Citicorp, JP Morgan Chase, they received millions of dollars. They were at the top of the list of the amounts of money distributed through this plan. These are corporations that got their start, their seed money from investing in the transatlantic slave trade and the enslavement of my African ancestors. So actually they have screwed us multiple times, over and over and over and over and over again. And they're the ones getting the money. So these people waging these protests, really who they should be mad at is those multinational corporate entities. That's who's preventing them from being able to sustain, the health of their businesses, not everyday working people who are not working so that they can stay safe and not get sick and not die. So that's one of the main misinformation points of this campaign. They should be directing their anger at multinational capitalism, not at everyday working people who are not working. And then instead they promote this insane logic. Well, the flu kills 25,000 people a year. I'm so sick of hearing that. That's an absurd argument. I mean, if a high school student can understand that if you say the flu kills 25,000, even if it kills 50,000 people a year, or any of the diseases they're claiming are equivalent to COVID-19, if you look at this thing has killed 50,000 people in this country alone just in a couple of months. And that's why we're doing shelter in place, which is not happening when these 25 or whatever thousand people are being killed by the flu. So that right there, to a logically thinking person, should tell you that we are not looking at the same thing by trying to line these two things up and compare them to one another. We are clearly looking at something different with this COVID-19 pandemic. So with all of that, why are these people making these demands? So let's talk about, who is actually out there engaging in these protests. So, you're talking about a collection of right-wing political and militia groups. You're talking about small business people, and you're talking about a smattering of people that, just wouldn't know their left ear from their right ear when they wake up. But those people, that last group I mentioned, they're not the people driving this. And it's important to understand that they are not the people who are driving this process. So we're talking again about political right-wing groups and right-wing militia groups. Now, we'll talk about the political elements in a second, because they are clearly the ultimate driving force behind all of these so-called protests that are happening. But I want to spend a second to talk about these militia groups, the people who are showing up with these guns, with AR-15, semi-automatic, automatic weapons. These folks, talking about them, because it's important that we understand that, because if you look at like the prevailing logic on the left when they see these people is to joke about it, and I understand that sentiment, but that is a very naive approach. If that's what you think is all that's necessary in response to what these people are doing, that's very naive. It's very important, critically important, that people understand the foundations behind these protests are rooted deeply in white supremacist ideology and concepts. They're rooted in this concept that European working people have some sort of entitlement to the wealth and comforts and milk and honey that the capitalist system offers. And the fact that more and more often working class European people are not receiving these perceived benefits that they're supposed to have has created this anger on the part of millions of European people around the world, millions upon millions, even millions just within this country alone. And these folks, this ideology they have is rooted in this concept that they're the ones who created this wealth in this country and in all the capitalist industrialized countries, and that the rest of us are just going along on their coattails and offering no constructive and productive use in this society. These protests are rooted in this type of ideology. And that's very important for everybody to understand, because if things take a turn to the left, if things take a really bad turn rather, and you begin to see, like, for example, shortages in food, or people are not getting out, there's so many people on unemployment, they're not getting it, or whatever the case may be, or the virus just outbreaks to a point where it's uncontrollable, then it's these elements who have demonstrated that they will resort to violence to maintain control as they see fit. They did it after the flooding in New Orleans. They drove around neighborhoods shooting at African people. They did it in South Dakota during the anti-pipeline protests that the indigenous people waged in. They have a history of, America's built on this kind of right-wing white supremacy violence. This is the basis of this country. So just have a few more things just have this go a little longer than it is. And I think we are really at a threat of seeing this type of reality come from these people. So I'm not willing to take these people lightly in that sense. And just in case you say, well, you're just talking behind a computer. No, what I'm talking about these people is based on my own practical experience dealing with these people for decades. And I'll give you one example of that. So last week, there was one of these anti-opening up protests in a little town called Redmond, Oregon, here in the US last week. Now, you might not, most of you probably have never been to Redmond, you've never heard of Redmond. I have a lot of experience, physical experience in the town of Redmond, Oregon. I used to do a lot of political organizing work there. And I actually, because I spent time there, it's a little town, it's 25,000 people. Redmond and Bend, Oregon are the most populated areas of the entire central Oregon state. Redmond is a cowboy town. And when I say cowboy, I don't just mean people who wear cowboy hats. I'm talking about Redmond has the highest ratio of professional cowboys of any town in the US. So it is without question a cowboy town. And your brother spent a lot of time in that town. There's a little karaoke bar there named Timbers. I used to sing karaoke there at night in Redmond. So I know Redmond. I know people that live there. And so last week they had one of these protests there that hundreds of people came out to support and participate. And so the man in the middle picture here, his name is B.J. Soper. I guess that's how you pronounce his name. And he is one of the leaders of the militia organizations there in the state of Oregon. And he actually has some standing, I understand, on a national level with the right-wing militia movement. And so in the course of working with the Rural Organizing Project, which is a wonderful group in Oregon who was pushing back against these militia groups, and as a result of it came under extensive attack by these groups. And they asked myself to help organize some security for their organizing efforts to expose the white supremacy and the actions of these militia groups. And so, of course, I agreed to do that and recruited some wonderful comrades to help with that. So what I'm saying to you is I've had face-to-face experience with this man in this picture right here. And not only me, like if you look at the picture on the top, that's one of the Rural Organizing Project events. I think that one took place, this is in 2016. This one took place in a town called Albany, Oregon, here in the US. And you can see me in the back standing there on security post in that picture. And I believe it was at that event that one of the men in the audience there said that African women and European women have different gestation cycles. So that gives you an idea of the ideas that motivate the people that we're talking about here, who have guns, by the way. And then in the bottom picture, we have the co-director of the Rural Organizing Project, whose life was threatened hundreds of times. And that's why we were providing security for her and the staff. And then the other co-director is right behind her. And there we have a good comrade, Tiernan, and Tiernan has given me the okay to use Tiernan's name. And you should know who Tiernan is, because that's a soldier. And so in that picture, if you look in that picture, what's happening is that I think it was in Medford, Oregon, and that was where we went there. And I'm standing in the back again there. And we had dozens of these people show up, armed to the teeth, swastikas, Confederate flags, everything. And, that's why Tiernan is standing there, to serve as protection in case some of these people you're looking at in the audience chose to try to attack these wonderful people that are just trying to engage in a struggle for justice. So I'm not just talking theoretically. We came face to face with this guy you see this picture in. And the danger with people like him is that he's not just some, stereotypical right-wing straw coming out the mouth, chaw chewing redneck. He has political sophistication to himself, where he is someone who has charisma, who can reach quite a few people, who would not be drawn to like the Ku Klux Klan, but would be drawn to someone like him who espouses a lot of the similar ideas, even if it's not on a conscious level. It's still, like I said, rooted in those same ideas. And so when we encountered this guy, he actually came up to me and tried to strike up a conversation with me. And of course, that's not going to happen. I'm not talking to anybody like that. But the point is that these folks are out here organizing in communities, recruiting people. That's how they're able to get hundreds of people out to these protests that they're engaging in. And make no mistake about it, these people are dangerous. They're violent and dangerous. So when they're talking about like people need to go back to work, what's really going on? Like, what are they really talking about? Now all of a sudden, like if you look at this picture, now all of a sudden these right-wing European women, now they want to respect women's rights to choose. That's a popular meme that's going around, and it's a correct one. Clearly They have never had any concern about respecting people that don't fit in the sphere of how they see the world should be functioning within. So what are they talking about? So it's important to understand who the political forces are behind these protests. These are not just working people or small business owners who are out here because they're losing money. There's a organized political apparatus directing these things. And you should know groups like Donors Trust. Donors Trust. If you have never heard of Donors Trust, what it is it's a multi-million-dollar nonprofit organization that provides financing to extreme right-wing causes and efforts. And they are in the forefront of providing money to groups like the Idaho Freedom Foundation, which has sponsored protests like this, and probably some of these other, like the Michigan Freedom Fund, which was behind those protests at the Michigan State House, and all these other things. So who is behind Donors Trust? Charles and David Koch are, one of them is dead, but they are the people who behind Koch Industries. And Koch Industries is one of the largest corporations in the world, and certainly within the United States. Outside of Walmart and Amazon, after that, Koch Industries employs hundreds of thousands of people. So it's the next largest employer in this country. Now, you might not have ever heard of Koch Industries, but you've certainly heard of the products that they produce. They're the ones that produce quilted northern toilet paper and paper napkins that somebody you know is going out right now hoarding and buying up all of the supplies too. They produce Dixie cups, they refine oil, they have a diversified portfolio of capitalist interests that they engage in, but the company behind it is this Koch Industries. And so by developing Donors Trust in 1999, they have been able to generate upwards to $1 billion in contributions to anti-woman, anti-African, anti-indigenous, anti-colonized people, anti-LGBTQ, anti-working people campaigns. They do it on a political realm. They're the ones responsible for the right-to-work so-called right-to-work legislation that eliminates collective bargaining and the ability of people to unionize. They were behind the work to stop Nissan workers in Mississippi from unionizing 3 years ago. They're behind all of it. They're behind anti-LGBTQ legislation, like the bathroom bill in North Carolina a couple of years ago, sorry. And they're also behind a lot of these stand your ground laws. So they do that through the legislative arm that the Kochs created, called the American Legislative Exchange Council, or ALEC. And you can look them up and see, you know, the sinister actions that they engage in. But also they donate money to a lot of these militia groups that we're talking about, these far right groups, these violent groups, these groups that are training for this war and for this tyranny, stopping tyranny that they talk about. They really have this entitled victimization philosophy that European people are the most oppressed people in the world, simply because they are not seeing the access to the fruits of our labor that they're accustomed to seeing. So this is the financial thrust that supports these people. Because if you think about these rallies, it's not just advertising on Facebook. They are busing people into these rallies. They're providing speakers fees to people. They're spending thousands of dollars on these rallies that are happening. And there are a number of these events that are happening. So the money has to come from somewhere. So this is the source where you can see where it's coming from. And then they have a number of front groups to disguise, you know, these donations to the Donors Trust. You know, they use a number of them. Knowledge and Progress Foundation is another one they use, the Bradley Foundation. There are a ton of them. But what they're doing is trying to finance and really push instability in this society so that they can force us to have to engage in actions that are not in our interests. So there are really some sobering factors that we need to look at in relationship to this. It's important people never forget that this is a capitalist government run by multinational corporations Whoever is president, I don't care what political party they belong to, their role is to be spokespersons for the bourgeoisie system, the capitalist system. That's their job. Doesn't matter if they're Democrat, Republican, doesn't matter if they're a one-eyed alien, purple alien from Mars. If they're president of the United Snakes, their job is to promote multinational capitalist accumulation, capital accumulation. That's their job. That's their primary concern. It is the only thing that they're concerned about. And I want to say, I disagree with people who say, well, these people are really just like, you know, they just care about money. They don't, they just need to be better informed, or we need to appeal to their humanity or their morality. I disagree with that sentiment 100%. I go along again with what Kwame Ture said, that that's a very heartfelt approach. It's a wonderful approach to want to appeal to people's morality. But when you're talking about these capital accumulation people, these capitalist people, as he said, the problem is that they don't have souls. They don't have morality. So when you're appealing to their morality, you're wasting your time. And so what I mean by that, I just want to make sure this is clear because it's very important. So I believe 100% in the values that I'm articulating. I believe that revolution is the solution, that the masses of people on earth deserve quality food, clothing, healthcare, the ability to a quality education, the ability to the opportunity, the egalitarian opportunity to have the resources to reach their full potential as human beings. And I am dedicated to those principles 100%. I will live my life for whatever time I have left, doing everything I can to achieve those principles, and I will die for those principles. So since I know that that's my foundation, I have to look at these people and understand that they have the same foundation. So when they believe in capital accumulation at death, I believe that they are willing to die for this. I disagree with people who are saying they just want us to die. Yeah, that's certainly true. They do want us to die, but I believe they would die. I believe they would go back to work and risk their own lives for this capital accumulation model that they believe is the salvation for humanity. And so if you understand that, you understand how dangerous these people are. So McKinsey Institute, like I study economics, and so I follow a lot of this data. So McKinsey Institute is one of these organizations that produces economic data, and I'm able to extrapolate what I need from them and throw back what's worthless. But one of the things they projected is that the US economy alone is estimated to lose $7 trillion by July if these shutdowns continue. $7 trillion loss by July. If these, not billion, not million, trillion, if this shutdown continues. Now, that whole entire so-called stimulus package was only less than a fourth of that amount. So that's what these people are really concerned about, you all. This is what they're concerned about, and they want to do everything in their power to prevent these types of losses from happening. So that's why they're pushing, open up. May 1st, May 15th, May 30th at the latest, y'all got to go back to work. That's why they're pushing that, because they know that their ability to accumulate capital is based on your ability to work to produce that capital for them. And so they only, the only way that they can ensure that their interests are protected is to push you to make yourself unsafe. So to give you an example on the ground level, African people in the US account for 12%, 13% roughly of the national population, right? We're 40% of the people who drive buses. Clearly a profession, and it's higher in the urban areas, obviously. Clearly a profession where social distancing is virtually impossible. You have to have close contact with people. And we have the type of jobs, us indigenous people, when I say indigenous, I'm talking about people who call themselves Native, Indigenous, Latino, Mexicano, Puerto Ricano, all of them are indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere. So when we say that, that's what we're talking about. Working class white people, Asian people, working class Asian people, all of these folks, working class folks who perform these jobs, the jobs that we are forced to perform, most of us, it's impossible to socially distance. Driving a bus, it's impossible to clean rooms, to be custodians and not be subjected to contracting coronavirus. That's just the reality of carrying people's luggage and doing these things. jobs that we do that most Europeans would never do, who are not in the financial or economic situation where they have to do it. So this is the reason why we're the ones who are getting the hardest, sustaining the hardest hits with this disease. And if you look at it, you know, bus driver salaries make about $30,000 on average nationwide. And if you're a woman, if you're not a man driving a bus, it's going to be about $4,000 less than that. So no health care, you know, for the most part with these jobs, no ability to protect yourself. We're the ones who are going to be getting sick. We're the ones who are going to be dying. We are 25% of the postal delivery workers. Just look at who's delivering your mail and your package. It's women, it's colonized people. That's who's doing it. So, you know, and people, these entitled Europeans are coming out their houses, because I've talked to mail carriers who are telling me this, coming out their houses demanding that the mail carrier puts the mail in their hand. That's, as far as I'm concerned, the mail carriers are within their right to use mace or whatever it is they have to protect themselves from dogs on those kind of people. Use the mace and keep it going and hope nobody sees it. But that's why we're the ones getting sick. And so the important message coming from the ruling class to the working class is get back to work. You've had a long enough vacation. We need you to do what you do so that we can continue to make all this money off of you. So, you know, just to reiterate, there's no question, like these values of these protests are rooted in ideologies of white supremacy, patriarchy, homophobia, and all of those are appendages of the capitalist system. No question about that. And so just think about the contradictions, the obvious contradictions here. For example, these people are out here saying everybody needs to get back to work. But the people they're really talking about getting back to work are working class people. The very people that they claim make no contribution to this society. That's an astonishing contradiction to me. And then the political leadership, you know, as well as millions of Europeans, because that's mostly who's at these protests, you know, they're willing to sacrifice their lives, which they're doing. Like I saw a meme and it sounds very appropriate to me. Like when they say all lives matter, I guess they really mean no lives matter, because they don't even have concern for their own lives, showing up like this and demonstrating no social distancing, no gloves, no mask, no, just daring coronavirus. The virus is floating around. You look at this picture, that virus is floating around saying, paradise, and infecting as many people as it can. And so these people are willing to risk themselves, you, me, everything to save their businesses. And look at the glaring contradiction with that. We have been social distancing for just over 30 days. Just over a month. And these businesses, I'm talking about the small businesses too, because too often, so many of you all let them escape criticism when you're critiquing capitalism, like they're with us. They're not with us. They're with the capitalist system. They're the petty bourgeoisie within the capitalist system. And I don't want to hear anything about my friend has a small business. Yeah, I understand that. Your friend has a small, and your friend might be a decent person, but the institution is a part of the capitalist system. That's the same logic as, well, my father's a police officer, my brother's a police officer. Well, clearly they don't, your brother and your father have no capability to stop the police system from terrorizing us. So it's irrelevant to us for you to keep telling us about them participating as police. They have no ability to change what's happening. So it does us no good to have them there. So that's an irrelevant point. And that's the same thing with small businesses. They have no ability to change the oppressive nature of this system, but they've only gone a little over a month with no work in progress, with you not working for them, and they're already on the verge of bankruptcy. Look at the glaring contradiction there, because you, having gone a little over a month with no money, your landlord, your mortgage, they have very little to no sympathy for you whatsoever. You should have had savings. You should have prepared for a rainy day. Isn't that the prevailing logic in this country for all of us, for working people? Why isn't that the same logic for these businesses? What do you mean you can't go 30 days of a hit without sustaining yourself? If you weren't prepared to properly run a business, then you shouldn't have been in business in the first place. And so we're tired of hearing this glaring contradiction, and people don't see it. We see it clearly. You can't even go 30 days. That shows us clearly that this entire system is based on the exploitation of our labor, as we've been saying for centuries now. It's not based on anything, the great entrepreneurial spirit of the American capitalist. No, it's based on exploiting colonized people, women, and all of that. That's what this is about. And because that hasn't been able to happen in 30 days, they're on the verge of bankruptcy. And so they want you to risk your life so that they can maintain their Mercedes-Benz payments. You got to be crazy. Capital accumulation. That's what this is about. That's all these protests are about. And sure, there are some working class people out here among these folks, but they're out there because they agree with the ideological premises of this that are stated at the top of this page, that we are the ones who are supposed to work to generate wealth for them. To them, that's the only value that we provide. And so therefore to them, it's just important that we go out and do this, and whatever else happens, then they'll just deal with, let the chips fall as they may. And so that's what we're dealing with when we talk about this issue. And it's a sad commentary. But the important thing for those of you who are concerned about justice, and even those of you who might be watching who are agents for the enemy, our objective is to turn you around. We have a saying in the All African People's Revolutionary Party, our objective is to make the police work for the revolution. And so we want to talk to everybody listening. So this picture on the right, it doesn't have much to do with coronavirus. Actually, this picture was taken in February, so a couple of months ago. And it's a Saturday liberation school we do here in Sacramento. And I just posted it because the picture makes me feel good, because I have my wonderful Pan-African jacket on, my Kwame Ture shirt on, and I'm engaging in a lesson to educate our children about the need to be revolutionary and self-sustaining, and that this system is not their savior, the police are not their friends, that we are each other's own salvation. And so that work that I do in that school, that work that we do in the AAPRP is inspiring to me. And I have the picture there, not just to illustrate me, but because I'm hopeful that it can be inspiring to you. So let's be optimistic and let's figure out how to stop this process of what these people are doing and start doing more for ourselves to improve our situation. So, you know, we're going to talk about this. We're going to have a different twist. Same message, because it's the correct one. We got to have everybody in organizations with political education programs. The reason why so many of these Europeans are out here doing this is because there's no political education in this society. A lot of these people out here, you know, people that want to be out in these protests. They may not have told you, but you do know people who want to be out here in these protests if they haven't already gone. They might even be some of the organizers of the protests. And so that's because there's no political education. There is no mass effort on the part of European activists in this country and in this world to educate the masses of European people about the point I mentioned early on in this, that these multinational corporations are stealing everything, and that's why you have nothing. And so there's nobody educating people about that. So they don't know that. So instead they direct their anger at us working class people, colonized people. So we have to have political education. That's the only way to turn that around. It is an absolute necessity. And that political education has to have a heavy, 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 heavy emphasis on anti-colonial, anti-capitalist, anti-white supremacy, anti-patriarchy, anti-homophobia political education. There are so many white left groups in this world today that they talk about anti-capitalism, no emphasis on anti-colonialism. I went to an event that a white left group sponsored a couple of years ago, and it was right before an election, a national election in this country. And they were talking about the title of this event. Now, I'm the only African in the room, and get this, the title of the event was Political Power in Black America. And I'm the only African in the room. So I told those people, it was like 50 of them in the room. It was on a university college campus. I told them, how are you all, who here, I just asked the question, who here knows who Kwame Ture is? Nobody in the room raised their hand. I'm like, how the arrogance of you all thinking you could have a conversation about political power and African people in this country and not know someone like Kwame Ture, who was on the front line, arrested 27 times for fighting for the right for African people to vote. You don't know anything about that, you're not qualified to have this discussion. And it polarized the whole conversation, which was my objective, and got them talking about how they need to learn more. Some of the people in there talking about they need to learn more about this. So that's the whole point of that. And your organization has to have that type of education, including all of those components. So at that point, when we have that political education, we have to have a community defense project to go along with your political education. And we had a whole session on community defense a couple of weeks ago. And if you missed that, there's a video on YouTube, just type in community defense, revolutionary community defense, and you can watch it. It goes step by step on how you can organize a community defense project, but it has to be linked to an organization that has ongoing, consistent political education. So now I'm gonna stop and we're gonna have some interaction. Shakur, I'm gonna ask you if there are any comments or questions that need to be addressed.
Yeah, so Bobby, I think this was your first slide. We both wanted to know, where was the Trump swastika Pence sign taken at? The person says, I see that I am repulsed. I can't even get into the frame of mind of being proud of that mess. How can we? And then Bobby's comment was followed by Mark, who I think Mark was agreeing with you when you said the only purpose of people telling us to get back to work is that we are oppressed and that we need to be exploited, because Mark said exactly. Gloria followed up and said, any plans to have your Saturday school online? And then Kareem wanted to know, what essential readings do you recommend everyone read at this point? And Mark said yes, after I tried to guess what I thought Mark was saying exactly too. So thank you, Mark.
Excellent. Thank you all. So I believe the picture, I tried to research it concisely, and I believe the picture was at the what's the name of the town? Boise, Idaho, the Idaho Foundation, Freedom Foundation protest, which took place a little over a week ago. That's where that was. But you can find those types of signs at all of them. You know, they're common among these protests. And in terms of the question, thank you for the support of the comment about us working people. And in regards to the Freedom School, yes, we're already online. We're doing it online. We didn't stop. You know, we haven't missed a beat. We're still having it online. And so in a minute, I'll show you how you can get information about that. If you want to participate, anyone is welcome to come on board and participate in our online Saturday liberation schools. Okay, so thank you for the comments. And then now what I want to do is just do one more thing. I want to ask people to work with us and take a poll. And in a minute, you're going to see the poll. And it has two questions that I want you to honestly answer. The first one is, are you presently involved in a political organization that has an active and consistent political education program that you regularly participate in? Either yes or no. And then the second question is, would you be willing to commit to learn more about how to participate in such an organization? Now, if you're watching on Facebook, which is the majority of people, that's how you're seeing it. You're not going to be able to take this. Only the people on Zoom, you'll be the test audience for this. But I'm going to go ahead and send it out there. And I'm going to give you a few seconds to answer it, like 30 seconds here, and put your answers in there. And we'll see what people have to say. All right, so I'm going to end the polling here, and I'm going to share the results here. So in terms of active participation in an organization with political education, consistent political education, of the people who took the survey, 38% are, 63% of us are not, and that is very much appreciated for those who are honest. And then everybody, 100% said, yeah, they were willing to learn more about how to participate in such an organization. So we just want to say in closing, and then I'll go ahead and go to this screen. These are just references we have here. We want to invite you to do a couple of things. Everybody said they're interested in organizations. So what we want to ask you to do is you can, if you're African and you're interested in finding out more about the All African People's Revolutionary Party, no matter where you live, you are welcome to learn more about our party. We can do an online session and talk about the work we're doing. So we ask you to go to that first site shown there, www.aprp-intl for international.org. That's our international website. And you can contact us and say you're interested in joining. If you, for whatever reason, want to communicate with me directly, the site under that is my blog site I mentioned earlier, www.abetterworld.me. And if you want to, talk to me, you can do that. Go ahead and contact me there if you're interested in information about the Liberation School, and I'll be able to provide you how you can link up with that online, virtually. If you want information about how to join the APRP, you can do that. And also, if you're not African, but you want to join an organization, we work with anybody who's interested in justice. Then we invite you to contact through abetterworld.me, and we will talk to you and figure out how we can help you get going with what it is you want to be able to do. Okay, give us time to get back to you, but promise you that we will certainly do that. And then also these three sites listed here, aprpintel.org, abetterworld.me, and as well as hoodcommunist.org, are sites where you get updated information from a revolutionary Pan-African perspective on everything going on in the world today. So you want to follow these sites for information. We have regular articles on our international APRP site. I write and post at least 2 articles weekly on my own site. I just posted one yesterday on this fascism and how they rely on ignorance to get us. I reposted one today on North Korea. I wrote 3 years ago, everybody's talking about Kim Jong-un. Well, at least if you're going to talk about it, you should have an understanding of what's happening with North Korea. So the purpose of that article is to help people get some understanding of what's happening beyond the lies that imperialism tells you, because you can't depend on anything they say. And then hoodcommunist.org also has wonderful information, and I'm even privileged to write for that one as well. So appreciate everybody taking that poll. And again, just want to say, if you're interested, you can, if you want to get information about, you can privately message me and or Shakura if you want to get with your email, if you're interested in the APRP or our school or anything happening and you want us to contact you right away, do that. Or you can, as I mentioned, contact us through these sites, and we'll make arrangements to talk to you about what we're doing, how we're doing it. And if you don't like that, you don't like the APRP, then we'll encourage you to join some other organization. It's all about organization. So many times people talk about, well, I don't like organizations because it's stifling. My creativity is stifled. I've had people tell me that. I don't like organizations because people are dishonest. Yeah, I understand that. Like I just told you, I've spent 36 years in this organization. So I certainly don't need somebody not in organization to tell me the challenges of being in organizations. But what I will tell you is that if you're serious about addressing these problems we face, we have to get involved. We got armed people coming out. I read a story, the protest they had at the Kentucky State House earlier this week, show you the absurdity of the time. So they have, in most state houses, right, they have metal detectors for you to get in the building. And so these people wrote about how people who were unarmed, who were just coming into the building, were forced to go through the metal detectors, while the people who had weapons, because it was clear they had weapons, they were telling them to go around the metal detectors. So, clearly this European class entitlement is dangerous for us. And so we have to get organized to protect ourselves. If you're sitting around, you think that when you have to encounter these people, the police are going to protect you, I feel so sorry for you. Don't you know that a lot of the people in those organizations are police? Even the corrupt FBI, that terrorist organization had to acknowledge that in their report, that police departments across this country are thoroughly infiltrated by white supremacists and militia groups. So if you're sitting around and that's your only course of defense, I feel so sorry for you. We have to get organized. So, contact us so we can talk about how we can get prepared on all levels to protect ourselves. That's what we're here to talk about and help people with today. And we don't want you to hire us to do anything. We're servants of humanity. So talk to us, either put your email in the chat and indicate what interests you have, or you can contact us through one of these. Understand, if you contact us through the APRP site, you don't need to reference me because it's an international site. But if you want to talk to me directly, the abetterworld.me is the one to use. Okay, and look at all these sites for information. So at that point, I'll stop with a couple of minutes. We like to respect everybody's time and keep these exactly to an hour. So I'll stop and I'll ask Shakura again if there's anything else that we need to address.
Yeah, so Kareem was wondering if you could, what essential readings do you recommend everyone read at this point?
Yes.
Mark just confirmed something that I was trying to figure out. So thank you again, Mark. And Bobby said, I wholeheartedly agree with the premise that the protests are rooted in white supremacy ideology. At best, the protesters are so insecure because they cannot pay their bills and care more about that, paying their bills, than about their own health. Others do not care about anyone in their groups, including oppressed people, and care more about the economy. At worst, they want to kill everyone else. Example, the white supremacists threatening to weaponize the coronavirus against us.
Right.
I don't know if everyone had issues with the survey, but some people didn't get the survey. Jamila was one of them, so I noted that. And then Mark said thank you to both of us. And we have one email that I noted for someone who wants more information. And Cheyenne said, thank you, Ajamu. This is educational, empowering, and enlightening. Organize, organize, organize.
Yeah, organized, sister. Thank you for joining. That's a sister who's joining us from Canada. So we are so thankful that she was able to do that. Sister who's participating in our organization as well. So yes, you all, in terms of the reading, there are a lot of readings that we can recommend. And I would recommend going to our APRP international site, and they're all listed there. Any book by Kwame Nkrumah, any writings by Secretary are recommended. Walter Rodney, Frantz Fanon, they have a number of books. I always, tell people Rodney's How Europe Underdeveloped Africa is a great way to start to understand what we're talking about. But, Marcus Garvey, the Philosophy and Opinions of Marcus Garvey is a wonderful book. I just read an outstanding book I finished last night, A Black Panther in Exile, about Pete and Charlotte O'Neill, who have the community center in Tanzania. There's so many books and all of them are there, but we have to say, we don't encourage just people reading books individually. I mean, of course read books individually. But we have to say, that's not the only thing we're promoting. We're promoting organization. So we want people to read books in an organized fashion. In the All African People's Revolutionary Party, we have a work study process where we read books, all the books from the authors I just mentioned, and we debate them. We read books by Mao Zedong and Che Guevara and Fidel Castro and Rosa Luxemburg. We read Assata Shakur's autobiography. We read Malcolm X, the final speeches of Malcolm X. We read Rodney's book. We read Kim Il-sung. We read everybody, and we struggle over the ideas, because the saying that two heads are better than one, you will learn more in a group than you will learn for yourself. And then plus the way we do it, the purpose of the reading is not just to create advanced academic knowledge for us individually, but to use the knowledge we study to go out and engage in work to combat these challenges and these problems that we face in society. So we ask you, yes, read books individually, but join an organization and read books collectively. And make sure that organization has that community defense process as well. And then the last point on the question of, yes, certainly, thank you for that, Brother Bobby, certainly white supremacy is the key here. But I want to make sure people understand, they opened up in Georgia, the state of Georgia here in the United States. And the brother down there who had the barbershop, and I actually figured out, they had him on the news. I went to his barbershop when Shakura went to Tuskegee, and Tuskegee University in Alabama is not that far from Atlanta. So one of the times I was down there, we had to wait for her to get back from some work she was doing. So went to Atlanta. It's only 2 hours from Tuskegee, Alabama. And I went to that barbershop. It's a huge barbershop. And I remembered it because they had like 20 chairs in there. And if you know anything about African barbershops, they're typically not that big. And so this one had that. And this brother, he opened up Friday and they interviewed him on CNN. And he was talking, not like these people with these ridiculous protests. He was saying, I don't want to be here. It is totally unsafe. I just don't have another way to put food on my family's table. So I think it's important that you differentiate between someone like him, a working class person, even though he owns a business, you know, a barbershop's a hand to mouth type business. So someone like that, as opposed to these folks who are calling you and I to come work for them to make money. This guy was in his shop and he was like, I'm not even, like, I didn't even, like, people had the choice if they wanted to cut hair alongside me, but he was just there trying to put some money in his pocket to pay his electrical bill. That's totally different than that. But he said, made it clear, I would rather be at the house. So with that, it's 4:59. We want to thank you all. We want to ask you again to send your email, sign up. We cannot just engage in talk. We have to be involved in ongoing political organizing. The enemies that we face are doing that against us, and we will not be able to overcome that if all we're doing is just relying on sports and entertainment and then occasionally reading a book. That is not going to work against the forces that we're fighting against. We have to have everybody involved in organizations. So please get involved, at least commit to finding out about organizations. So there's no requirement for you to join the APRP if you come and say, hey, I want to find out more. So at least do that. At least come to that step and do that. And we want to invite you to join us next Sunday. We're on every Sunday from 4 to 5. We'll continue this. And next week, we'll have a topic which will come out in just a day or so. And so we want to wish you continued safe health, mental, spiritual, and physical. Join an organization working for justice. And if you don't see any organization out here that you like, then start the I wish this fool would stop talking organization and organize for liberation, justice, and forward progress for all of humanity. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Enjoy your week. Forward ever, backwards never. We are always ready for revolution.